Hey, everybody. How is everybody today? I can see a few faces. Everyone else is afraid of me. So those of you that are on screen, thank you. We are going to jump in. So we're in week 5. So we have 1 week left together after today. So today we're going to run through and we're going to talk about negotiations. And so we're in I just want to set the tone for what this is going to be today. We are in a tale of 2 markets. Some of you, your market has shifted, and we've got to look at it as though it's more of a buyer's market. Some of you, your market has not shifted, and you're still low inventory, multiple offers. And so this content, this round is very interesting because I want to make sure that there's value regardless of what market you're in. So if there's something that you're like, that's not the case in my market, just understand I'm trying to hit those that it is their market. And yet hopefully we'll get into some topics, or hopefully we'll get into some things that will also help you. I am going to try very hard to leave time at the end in case there are questions. And then next week, we are going to talk about how to help investors. So we've got a guest coach that's going to come on with me. Her name's Heidi Four. She is going to help us learn how to help investors with small amounts of down payment. What do we look for? How do we find it? How do we get comfortable with it if we're not an investor? So that will be next week. Plus, we will also go through asking for those referrals, getting those reviews. What are your post-close systems? So that once we get somebody at the closing table, that they then live in our database and we make sure that we're adding value to them. So for their next transaction that they want to work with us again. Okay, cool. So we're going to jump in. Again, if you have content questions, shoot me an email, jen.davis@kw.com. Administrative questions, finding your workbook, figuring out where your recordings are, those types of things, please email fasttrack@kw.com. Everything should be available in your online portal. Okay, so today we're going to talk about, here are our objectives. So if we accomplish this by the end of this hour together, my hope is that this is what you would be able to implement. Number 1, being able to clearly communicate whatever your current market condition is. Understanding additional strategies outside of price that we can utilize during negotiations. And then managing mindsets, not just the buyers, also yours as a buyer's agent. So when I look at mastering the market, right? If I'm going to master negotiations, I have to be a master of my market. I have to be what does Gary say? You have to be the local economist of choice. I want to be Angie's List for people, right? I want to be the librarian at the library. I want someone to come to me to ask questions and that they find value in my answers. So when we look at setting ourselves up for successful negotiations, that starts in the strategy session. And so we talked about that. The week of the strategy session, we said, sometimes we'll ask a question, right? Miss Buyer, what do you know about the market? And then we listen to do one of 2 things. So those of you that remember from a few weeks ago, we're listening to either validate what they already know or educate them with numbers and stories about why maybe they don't fully understand what's going on in the market, right? We don't want to tell anyone they're wrong. We want to use stories and numbers in order to help them see what we see in the market. So when I'm looking at setting fair market value in the market that I'm in, are there different markets? So what do I mean by that? If I look at being in different markets, I can look at it as maybe Springfield is a different market than one of our smaller suburbs. Maybe the luxury market is different than the first-time homebuyer market. So what I have to understand is what's the information that is going to be impactful for that buyer. So if Bob and I are meeting for the first time and Bob is a luxury buyer, in my market right now, Bob has some abilities to negotiate. There's time on market that's going to happen, right? We've got a little bit of give. Yet if Bob comes in and Bob is an investor and he wants to buy something in Springfield under 250,000, Bob's going to be competing. There are going to be multiple offers. And so I have to understand what are those two different markets and what are the extremes around them? How do I explain it to the buyer that I'm in front of? So what that means is I have to really know my market. I have to be in the market. I have to be studying the market. How do you study the market? Here are the things that I like to know, like off the top of my head that I can communicate at any time. I want to know what the list to sales price ratio is. However, I also want to look at subsets in that category. Is there a difference on list to sales price based on price point? Is there a difference in list to sales price that affects days on market? So what I mean by that part of it is, I know in my market that if there's no price change necessary, if a home is priced well the first time, average days on market in Springfield, Missouri are 18. If it's priced incorrectly, average days on market is 64. So with one price change, our average days on market goes from 18 to 64. It's important for me to know that because I'm going to help my buyers time something ahead of a price reduction or ahead of a repositioning from the seller side. I'm representing the buyer. So I want to know these things so that I can communicate them. I want to know what that is. And it's not just knowing it to be able to like regurgitate it. It's, I want to know it and I want to be able to explain it to a fifth grader, right? If I needed to explain it to someone, I want to be able to tell it in a way that they're going to understand. The example of that is month supply of inventory. What I know is that we have 1 month supply of inventory right now. What I know is a year ago, we had 0.3 months supply of inventory, right? And I'm watching it month over month. It's an indicator for me. What does that mean to a buyer? Well, I need to explain to them, here's where we're at. My conversation a year ago of 0.3 months supply of inventory versus right now is very different. So a year ago, and if those of you that are in the market that potentially have that lack of inventory, well, 0.3 months supply of inventory means if no new properties hit the market, we would be out of inventory in the next 2 weeks, right? 0.3 is less than 0.5. So in under 2 weeks time, we would be out of inventory if no new inventory hit. Now what I can say is we've got a full month supply. We have 30 days worth of homes before we would run out without any new inventory. I like to explain it in a way so that they can kind of start to see sense of urgency. Even now, if I say a month supply of inventory, that's not a buyer's market. So when the buyer is hearing national news of, we've got the ability to negotiate, the housing market is changing, all of these things, it is on a national level, it is changing. It is changing in my hyper-local market. However, it changing doesn't equal fire sale, right? We still only have 1 month supply of inventory. So I need the buyer to understand these things because I'm setting the stage for how we determine what the fair market value is. One of the core values of Keller Williams is win-win or no deal. A win-win is what's good for the seller, what's good for the buyer, right? What makes the most sense? So understanding these types of data points are going to help you communicate a little bit easier. I want to be a contract expert. So some of you are in an attorney state and some of you are in a title state. So those of you that are in attorney state, you probably have an attorney that are preparing those contracts for you. Yet you still need to understand the terms of the contract so that you can prepare your buyer for how we're going to structure that offer. Those of you in a title state, you're writing the offer, right? You're actually filling out the blanks. You're doing those types of things. And so we have to understand that constantly contracts are being updated. The bulk of the contract, the addendums, seller's disclosures, all of these things that are potentially, you know, the roadblocks of being an agent. The thing that we can make the biggest mistake on is probably here. And so when I look at being a contract expert, it's studying those contracts. It's knowing the contracts well enough that if a client calls me and asks a question, I don't have to pull one out to be able to respond, right? I can have them read me the section or reference the section, and I can give a really in-depth response or answer to that question. When you're new, this is scary. We've all been new at some point, and we've all had to learn a real estate contract. And we all had to, there's this stress of, how am I going to present this? Is this going to seem like it's new? What if they know more than I know? The fastest way to gain confidence is to have knowledge. What we know is the more knowledgeable we are, the more confidence that we're going to convey. And so one of the things that I would suggest, and it's skipping ahead a little bit, is role play explaining a contract to someone. If you've never done it, you look at the buyer agency agreement we talked about in the strategy session. If you've never gotten anyone to sign one of those, I wouldn't practice on a client. I would pull somebody in from our market center, from your team, and have those conversations. How do I explain earnest money? How do I explain non-refundable earnest money? How do I explain X, Y, or Z, right? Someone's buying a home that was built before 1979. Lead-based paint, right? Or 69, I can't remember right now. But if you look at on something like that, we have to be able to say, how are you going to explain lead-based paint to someone without it terrifying them? So understand, what do these things look like, and how do we explain it? We also need to understand, if we're in that hot market where we're having to do some wild things to negotiate a deal, what are the ramifications to your buyer of removing certain contingencies? So if I remove the contingency of a home inspection, what might happen? If I remove the contingency of an appraisal, are the buyers very prepared for what that means? So when I look at setting the stage for negotiations in a strategy session, I don't want to explain to somebody that for the first time that they're potentially need to waive an appraisal when we're ready to write the offer. They're emotionally attached to this house, and if I say it to them then, it's going to be a letdown. I'm having that conversation early on, so when we get there, they're prepared for what the market is. Okay, so when we master the offer, there are a couple of stages in how do we write offers? How do we get to be master negotiators? One of them is in the preparation. So preparation is key. Some of you are going to look at this and you're going to think, Jen, this is very basic. I challenge you to still learn something. What are you doing? What habit has slipped that maybe if you did would either make your clients experience better or make your relationship with the listing agent stronger? Relationships with listing agents in a market like I just came out of probably won my buyers more deals than my actual negotiation skills, right? And so look at this with a fresh set of eyes. One of the things for those of you that were at family reunion that they talked about was going back to the basics. Let's clean up our foundation. Let's shore it up so that we make sure that we're the disruptors in this market and that we're taking market share. So I want to know, is there an offer review date? What's the time? I also want to ask the follow-up question to a listing agent of, I understand that your offer review date and time is Monday at 5. Is there an offer that your seller would accept now that would prevent them from waiting? I'm not saying we're going to write that offer. I just want to know, is there something that would prevent the seller from waiting for that amount of time? Can I get my buyer any type of an advantage? Every time that someone has answered yes to me on that, it's not been price. It's been the seller maybe needed additional time to stay in the house, or they needed, they didn't want a home inspection, or they didn't want to make any repairs. So there were times that we were able to avoid the offer review date and time, and it didn't mean that my buyer had to pay anymore. It just meant we had to make it more convenient for the seller. When you're preparing that offer, we want to make sure that all terms are clear and understood by the buyer. So any of you that have been working with buyers that have lost out on deals, and then they start escalating what their offers are and these other types of things, may understand that sometimes that causes buyer remorse later. So what I want to do when I explain a term to a buyer, I'm going to explain it, and then I want them to interpret what I said. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I know that we just talked about waiving the appraisal. This house is listed at $450,000. Can you talk me through, from your perspective, what will happen if the home appraises at $425,000? I just want them to explain it back to me, that I haven't shortcutted any information. And then I am going to reiterate what it takes to win the offer. I'm going to connect with that listing agent, right? I'm calling the listing agent at the first possible time that I know that my buyer is going to write an offer. And I would call and say, hey, Lindsay, it's Jen Davis with Keller Williams. I'm super excited about your listing at 123 Main Street. I've got these clients that are ready to make an offer. Outside of price, can you tell me what's important to your seller? Because at this point, we all kind of know what price it's going to take, right? We know within reason what's going to happen. However, when I ask Lindsay that question, Lindsay's going to give me the things I don't know. What closing date is important to the seller? Or what type of loan structuring is important? Do they need a lease back? Do they have another home that they're buying? Would a fast closing help them? Whatever that looks like, she's going to give me that information. And then I may say something like, cool, that is super helpful. Also, do you have any gut or any feeling on motivation and price? I'm not leading with what's it going to take to get this house and surrounding it by a price conversation. I'm going in with the secondary things that make a seller's life easier so that I can see, maybe I can save my buyers some money just by making it easier for the seller. If I do that and I talk to Lindsay and I call her and we connect and she gives me advice and says, Jen, they cannot close before April 15th. The last thing that I'm going to do is write an offer with a closing date pre-April 15th. Because what happens is now I've signaled to Lindsay, I didn't listen. I really just took up her time. I called and asked some questions and then I didn't follow through with it. So what we've got to understand is when we are making these connections with the listing agent, ask their advice and then follow it if it's a true win-win. Now, if I have a buyer that needs to close before April 15th, I might say to Lindsay, hey, I'm going to do my best to get it as close to that date as possible. However, we're also stacked up on time. I would love to make this work, yet we really need to close on the 9th. Is 6 days going to be a deal breaker? So I'm going to listen to Lindsay's advice if I can. And if I can't, I'm immediately going to communicate with her why it's not going to work for the buyer. And I'm going to look for that win-win solution. Mastering the offer. So when we're presenting the offer, make the offer as clean as possible. So every morning from Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 9 Central Time, I and a couple of other MAPS coaches role play live, right? Anyone's welcome to join. It's free. It's a value add that MAPS does. And recently, I think it was yesterday, the objection came up from somebody in the group that was watching. And they said, I have a buyer and these 3 things. They want to make an offer, yet they're worried about the roof on a garage. They're worried about a dishwasher, and they're also worried about an interest rate buy down. So when I'm talking about making the offer as clean as possible, how would I handle that? If a buyer said those 3 things to me, what I would say is, okay, Lindsay, talk me through this. Out of those 3 things, what's most important to you? My guess is it's the interest rate buy down, right? There are certain things that are going to be the bigger ticket items. So my suggestion to Lindsay might be, hey, what we know is there's some psychology that goes around with negotiations, right? Everybody wants to feel good about it. And I'm hesitant to add a bunch of little things in here in addition to this one big thing, because most sellers are going to be like, gosh, I'll replace this garage roof. It's a very small square footage footprint, and a dishwasher can be, I don't know, $800 at Lowe's. I'll do those two things. I don't want to do the interest rate buy down, or I don't want to do the seller close. I don't want to pay any of your closing costs. So what I would suggest would be, how do you make it as clean as possible and yet your buyers still get what they want? Even in a market where it is shifting towards the buyer and the buyer has the ability to ask for more things, when I write a clean offer, I'm setting up my client for success later in additional negotiations. If I don't get every penny out of the seller this first round, guess what? They're going to be more likely to make some repairs after the inspection. They're going to be more likely to, kind of adjust sales price if an appraisal comes back low. They're going to be more likely to work with our schedule if that buyer needs to go in and measure for, how big the refrigerator space is. We've all had those buyers. And yet what happens is if we can write a really great first offer and make it as clean and as simple as possible, it really is going to set the tone for the rest of the transaction. Call the listing agent to sell the offer and your buyer. So I'm going to call the listing agent and say, hey, I'm getting ready to send over this offer. I did take your advice. I did this, this, and this that we talked about. Here's the pricing. I'm going to go ahead and send it over. Can you just confirm with me when you get it? The number of times that our team gets offers that no buyer agent has called is unbelievable. There would be times when there are still times where we'll have multiple offers. Recently, we got 12 offers on a property, one agent called. We're representing the buyer. So we've got to make sure that we're selling the offer and our buyer. What can we do? What else needs to happen? Even if it's a low offer, those of you that are in a market where you can write an offer 10% under list price, we still have to sell it. Hey, Lindsay, it's Jen. I just want you to know I'm sending over this offer. The buyers love the home. However, I'm struggling on comps. And so when we're looking at numbers, they're going to come in under what your list price is. And I just want you to know kind of the reasoning behind it, right? I'm still selling my buyer. I'm not selling a buyer only in good times when the buyers need to win against 15 other offers. I'm selling the buyer just as hard when we're coming in with a low offer that might be insulting. I want to take the emotion out of it, because if I can tell the narrative to the listing agent of the reasoning behind it, that's what the seller's going to tell, or that's what the listing agent's going to tell the seller. So now I've positioned the offer how I want to position it, not only to the listing agent, also to the seller. My communication matters. I'm going to tell you, I would not utilize a love letter. There are all kinds of Fair Housing Act violations that these can cause. I openly on our team, if we get one from a buyer's agent, we will just let them know that we're, that the seller doesn't want it presented, right? That is a conversation you need to have with your seller if you're representing sellers. Yet I would be very cautious in as a buyer's agent utilizing that to stand out. One of the ways I would stand out, right? So if we're not going to utilize love letters, the follow-up question is, well, gosh, Jen, how do I make my offer stand out? If I'm in multiple offers, how do I do this? One of the things that we will do is we'll take a video of us as the agent, not the family buying the house, but I'll take a video outside of a house and I'll say, hey, Lindsay, it's Jen. I'm standing outside 123 Main Street. These buyers are so excited. They love the backyard. They love this. They love that. We're getting ready to send over an offer. I couldn't get a hold of you. I'm sure you're slammed with other calls. Let me know outside of price what matters most to your seller. I promise you I'm the only one sending the video. And so I'm going to stand out to Lindsay. She gets to see my energy. She gets to see that I'm excited. She gets to see that the buyers are excited. And I've not said she needs to call me back. Hey, can you just message me with this? I still get to ask the question, and I'm being respectful of her time. When I send the offer, I am going to bullet point the important points in my email. I'm not trying to sneak anything through. So for any of you buyers agents that have been out there a long time, all of us have missed writing something into the offer. And so what I found is I've missed some things in the actual contract. Yet when I go to bullet point all of the different things, it typically jogs my, like, oh, I forgot to check that box that I was supposed to check. The other thing that it does is it makes it really easy for the listing agent to read and digest and present. All we're doing is saying, choose my buyer, choose my offer. I'm going to make this really easy on you, listing agent. I'm going to be pleasant to work with. You're going to have a good experience. I'm going to help make you look good to your seller. We also want to leverage our preferred partners. So having a lender reach out on behalf of the buyer. This is whether it's a low offer or if we're competing. That lender can make a call and say, hey, I know that, I know that Jen's making an offer with her clients, and those clients are coming in a little bit under your list price. I do want to let you know that they are well qualified. They're good clients of the bank, or I've known them a long time, or they have a great credit score. We're really excited to be able to get this to close. A lender kind of giving their opinion on the buyer and the ability to get them to close can be a huge piece of leverage for you as a buyer's agent. Now, when I look at home inspectors, we utilize most of us utilize 3 or 4 on a regular basis. When I utilize 3 or 4 on a regular basis, I'm a preferred client of the inspector. So one thing that I can do is I can ask them to hold me a spot at the beginning of every week. If I know I've got a big weekend of showing properties and my expectation is that I'm going to sell a lot of properties over the weekend, I'm going to ask them to hold me an inspection time for Monday or Tuesday. Here's why. I've got 10 days in my state. I don't know, where you guys are at, but in my state, I've got 10 days to have it inspected and ask for anything that I'm going to ask for. Do you know what happens in 10 days? Everyone gets stressed out. If I can get in and get this done, the likelihood of us getting to closing is, number one, much higher. Number two, if I'm writing a low offer, I can say to the listing agent, hey, we're going to know really quick whether or not we're going to be able to make this work. It's Saturday afternoon. I've already got an inspection scheduled that we can put this in Monday morning at 10. We're going to know by Monday evening if this is a great fit, right? Or I'm in multiple offers. Hey, good news. We're going to get the inspection in. We're not looking to ask for any big, any minor repairs, only looking for big ticket items. My inspector can be there tomorrow at 10. I've reserved a spot. So when we leverage our preferred partners, it can set our offers apart, and none of these things cost your buyers any more money. So I want everyone to hear that. When I talk about that we had, we're at 98% of offers written to offers accepted. Our buyers aren't paying more than other buyers are paying. We're not talking them up in price. What we're doing is all of these extra steps to get the most amount of information we can get for our buyers to win. So when I look at the winning of the offer, there are a couple of things that happen. When we win one, we want to tell the success story. We want to make sure that if I win in multiple offers, I want everyone to know that. I want social media to know that. I want my other buyers to know that. I want potential buyers to know that. And the reason we do it is because we can say, we can show you how to win. Meet me for a strategy session. I've got the strategies that are going to get you to the closing table. I've got the strategies that can get you there. Guess what? If I'm not in multiple offers, how much greater does that look for my buyers that we were able to negotiate something off the price? Hey, good news. I just wanted to let you know, a buyer in my pipeline, we're starting to see the market adjust, and we were able to just secure a property for some buyers that have been looking for a little bit. And everything, a year ago, they had to wait because it was priced out of their range. We were able to just negotiate a home for them 10% under list price. Tell the success story. Make sure people still know that it's a great time to buy. We also want to make sure that we're still continuing to communicate with the buyer and the listing agent. So remember the first week when we went through the hole in the hose And I said that my whole is from the time we go under contract until the time we get closed. What happened to me is I would celebrate the win of the under contract. That was my win. Some of you are like, Jen, I don't ever celebrate till I got to closing. I just assumed it was going to close until I was like really far in the business and then learned that not all things close. Yet that was my win. And so I stopped, I didn't communicate at the same level. Well, guess what? That's a super stressful time for buyers. And so what would happen is I would stop communicating. They would get more nervous than they already were. And it was this spiral of, well, they certainly weren't going to give me a referral. They certainly weren't going to give me a review. And I had to talk them off ledges most Saturday mornings when I should have been showing other houses. So understanding what's the rhythm that we're going to communicate with our clients even after we win. And then we want to look at bulletproofing the transaction. What do you look at ahead of time, right? So what do I mean by that? An example I would give is once I start seeing that appraisals are not coming in anymore, right? Once I start seeing that there's a differential in what we're getting things under contract for and where the appraisal is coming in. I've seen more low appraisals in the last 30 days than I had in the last 90. So now what we do, what's the adjustment that I'm going to make? I'm going to ask the appraiser to call me to schedule the appointment, right? I don't want them to call the listing agent. I want to have a conversation with them. I don't want to talk the price up. I just want to communicate with them. Have you seen the comps? What do you need? How can I make this easy for you? I'm not talking the price up because I represent the buyer. On the listing side, I would want the appraiser to call me, right? I would probably say that I would want either party that I am. So if those of you that help both buyers and sellers, I want to communicate with the appraiser ahead of time because I want to know, am I going to have an issue? What corner can I look around? I'm not talking anyone up. I'm not overselling it. Yet I want to know what their thoughts are, what they're thinking going into it, so that if I can see that there's going to be a pain point, I can start positioning some other things to make sure that it's still that win-win. If I know there's going to be an appraisal issue, am I going to go after every single inspection item? Or maybe will I just ask for a home warranty? So then we want to learn from those offers that aren't accepted. I want to know what happened. What could have been done differently? Did we write a low offer? What happened, right? The house is still on the market. We wrote a low offer. The seller didn't take it. And the home is still on the market. I would call the listing agent and say, hey, what are our chances of getting this put together, right? You guys just rejected it. I understand that it was lower than average. Can you talk me through where you're at on pricing? Can you talk me through what would be a win for the seller? I want to learn from it so either we can go back to them or I want to learn from it so I know what to do next time or how to present it differently. If we're in multiple offers, I want the same information. What offer did they pick? What were the terms in that offer, right? Because I'm a buyer's agent. I'm learning. I want to know market of the moment. What do we have to do to win the offers? And so then I want to reset expectations with the buyer. When a buyer loses a house, they're not super happy, right? There's disappointment that sets in. And so what I found is I've got to very quickly adjust my messaging to the buyer when they lose out on a house. I need to very quickly make sure that we're reestablishing motivation and timeline so that they don't get frustrated and just step out of the market. So that sounds like a call, right? I would call and just say, hey, Bob, it's Jen. I know that we lost that one last night and you guys took it pretty hard. I found out some additional information from the listing agent and here's what I've learned, right? I'm going to give the information that I've gathered. And then I would say something like, I feel like we're in a really good position moving forward. Let's talk about, from your opinion, what could we have done differently so that would have been your house? And then I promise you, I'm going to go find a better house. I promise you, I'm going to find one that you're just as excited about. And so what we're doing is I'm saying, hey, this one didn't work. I also want them to communicate with me why they don't think they picked our offer or why the seller didn't respond to us. Because if they say it out loud, it's what Gary talks about, which is authorship is ownership. If I can get Bob to say, gosh, Jen, I shouldn't have written that offer 25% under list price. I should have written it 5% under list price. Cool. Are you going to be comfortable doing that moving forward? Yeah, I don't want to go through this again. Or no, Jen, I'm always going to do this, right? Then that's probably a different conversation. But I think what we've got to get comfortable with are those follow-up conversations of how do we review what happened to make adjustments moving forward? If we just continually write offers that get rejected or somebody picks a different offer over ours, our buyers lose faith in our ability to negotiate. They lose faith in us as their local economist of choice. And so we've only got so many before they start thinking that either it's now not the market for them or that they need to use a different agent. And so what I want to do is very quickly regroup with them and then be able to move forward. We need to be able to shift terms quickly in this market. That's any market that you're in. There are times when escalation clauses work. There are times when they don't. There are times when low offers work. There are times when they don't. There are times when we can ask for seller closing costs or refrigerators or whatever to be included in the sale of the house. And there are times that it doesn't. How are you going to know what terms are winning? My advice is find someone that takes a lot of listings and ask them who's winning. What offers are you getting? They don't need to share them with you. You don't need to read them. But anybody that's taking a lot of listings is going to understand what's happening in the market and what offers are winning because they're the ones receiving the offers, right? It's one of the reasons that we were always at this 98% offer written to accepted ratio is because we could adjust so fast because our team takes listings. We could ask the listing agents, what are you seeing? And be like, escalation clauses are out, right? They want post possession now. Okay, we're making those adjustments based on what they're seeing in the market at the moment. We're making those adjustments quickly. And when you pair that with getting the information from the listing agent, your chances of negotiating a successful offer are sky high. So when we look at, this is multiple offers. So those of you that are like, Jen, I'm not in multiple offers anymore. I'm really sorry. Hopefully this comes back around for you some other time. Yet some of our friends here are still in multiple offer situations. What are some things we can do? Number one, we can waive inspections. Remember, when we do something like this, when we waive something, we have to understand what the risk is to the buyer. They can pay an appraisal gap. So for those of you that don't know what an appraisal gap is, let's say the home is listed at $450 and we're going to offer $475. And we could say, I'm going to pay a gap in appraisal up to $460, right? I don't want to be on the risk for the whole $475. I just want to be on it for this $10,000. Or you could say, I'm going to waive the contingency. I'm going to offer $475. And if it doesn't appraise, it doesn't appraise. The shortened timeframes, like we talked about. So shortening the timeframes of inspections, due diligence periods, when earnest money is turned in, all of those types of things help set your offer apart. Escalation clauses. Escalation clauses are just one of those things where sometimes they're really well thought of and sometimes they're not. You need to understand your market. So an escalation clause, for those of you that are newer to real estate, is basically, I would say, I'm going to offer you $450,000 for this house. Yet I'm going to beat the next acceptable offer by $5,000 increments up to $475. So I'm going to escalate my offer based on any other offer that comes in. I don't want to go all the way to $475 if I don't have to. So I'm going to escalate over any other acceptable offer that comes in so that my offer can win. We can give a lease back to the seller. Seller doesn't know where they're going to go. They don't know how long it's going to take them to find a house. We can go ahead and close on the house. They know they've got their money and they can stay there for a period of time while they get moved into their next home. We can pay commissions for the sellers. So we can look at this and say, okay, they don't want to drive up the price because they're worried about the appraisal, but they're willing to spend an extra amount of money. They can say, I'll pay up to X amount of dollars for your listing agent or both agents. They can pay the closing costs for the sellers. You can write anything into the contract that's legal, right? In an effort to make the deal better for a seller in multiple offers. Here's the managing mindset piece. So when I look at this, guys, this is probably one of the most important topics right now is mindset. One of the things that I have a front row seat to right now in coaching is the amount of stress that agents and clients are feeling. And so when I look at mindset, it's twofold. We've got to help our buyers manage their mindset, yet we also have to manage ours. This is a fast-paced industry that is going through a lot of changes right now. And it can be overwhelming for some. So I do want everyone to take this part really seriously, because I want for you all to have a career here and not just one good year, right? We want to build a career, and some of that is being able to manage mindset and downtime. So the buyer's mindset, communication is key. Any single time that I've disappointed a buyer, it's been over lack of communication, either around an expectation or a timeline when I thought something would get done. So we've got to make sure that our buyers understand what's happening. How long do we think it'll take before we hear back from the seller? What can we expect with negotiations around inspections? At prepping them for it and continually communicating with them is key in their comfort level. And if they're comfortable, they're happy. And if they're happy, you're happy. So one of the things that I will talk about during communication is there are certain times in the transaction, even during the search for a buyer, even before you get to the negotiation, where it's quiet. Maybe we don't have a house to show them. Maybe we're between the inspection and the appraisal, or inspections handled, appraisals handled, and now we have this weird 2.5-week gap until closing. That's where the relationships are built. And so one of the things, Mary Cheatham King has a team in North Carolina, and her buyer's agent, Laura, said this to me one time. They call it a non-update update. So they will call and they'll say, "Hey, Heath, it's Jen Davis. Just wanted to connect with you and let you know it's just really quiet right now. You know, we've got your inspection. The sellers agreed to what we asked for. The work is being done this week. We can get it re-inspected next week. Appraisal, as you know, came in just fine, and we're really just kind of waiting on those repairs to get done and to get to closing." I've not told Heath anything he doesn't already know, yet I called him to say, "Hey, here's this," because then it's Heath's opportunity to say, "Oh gosh, Jen, I'm also kind of worried about this." Cool. We get to have a conversation. And I've just alleviated his kind of, well, I wonder what's happening, right? A buyer doesn't know that there are just quiet periods and that nothing is happening. When I look at a buyer that maybe there's just not inventory for, I might call and say, "Hey, Heath, it's Jen Davis. Just wanted to let you know what I'm working on today for you. I am looking through for sell by owners. I'm looking through expired listings to see if there's something that might meet your criteria and see if we can't drum up a house that would be a perfect fit for you." We all know that we do those things, right? We revamp a search for a buyer. We look at for sell by owners. We're looking at Facebook Marketplace sometimes for these buyers. Yet when we don't tell them that that's what we're doing, they actually don't think that you're thinking of them. They don't know that you're working for them. That non-update update is just, "Hey, you're top of mind and I'm still looking." We want to be solution-based. When a buyer is in a stressful situation and they have a list of questions, we want to make sure that we don't get sucked into their emotion. And some of the ways that we can do that is by identifying the actual question. So if somebody says to me, "Oh my gosh, Jen, I'm so stressed out. I've got, I'm trying to figure out the movers and getting utilities lined out and all these things." Cool. I've had a lot of buyers go through this in the past. Can I send you over what I think a preferred timeline would be for all of this? right? They're not going to, if I say it to them, they may listen to me. Yet if I send them an email of here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, they're like, oh gosh, it took the guesswork out of it. And I'm going to provide them the numbers. Here's the number for the utility company. Here's the number for the trash company. Here's the number for your HOA, right? I might even, if I had time, make some of those calls for them, right? We're here to help them. Now, as your business grows, you may be able to manage less of those types of things, yet just understanding what are they worried about and how can we help them find a solution? I want to make sure that we're keeping their energy high. If they've looked at a lot of houses and they've either lost offers or they can't find one, we've got to do something to recreate the excitement. This should be fun. They're buying a house. They're buying, whether it's a house they're going to move into or an investment property, either way, it's super cool that they're doing it. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that that excitement level is high and that they know that we've got them and that we're going to get them across the finish line. We always want to make sure that we're listening to the buyer's concerns and identifying what they really are. If someone says to me they're stressed, tell me about it. What are you stressed about? And they say the utility thing and movers and trash service. Awesome. Outside of those 3 things, is there any other thing that you're worried about? All I'm doing is letting them do basically what, we've all called it before, is like a brain dump, right? We've got to sometimes just get everything out so that then we can say, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was. Or we can get to the root of it. And sometimes it's a legitimate concern. Jen, I actually am worried that I'm going to lose my job. We're supposed to close in 2 weeks and I have fear that I'm going to lose my job. Okay, I can't solve I'm going to lose my job, but I can start building in protections for that buyer and what needs to happen. So we need to understand when someone says they're stressed, we don't just say, yeah, it's stressful to buy a house. I'm so sorry. You'll get through it and it'll be fine. Tell me about it. Let's listen to it. Remind them of why they're doing it. We wanted to be in a house by the end of March so that you would be situated and settled by summer, whatever that is, right? Why are they doing it? What was important to them? Now, more important is managing your mindset. So more than ever, I am seeing some signs of mental anguish with agents. They're struggling. There's a lot that's happened in the last year. They've gone from some high highs to some low lows. We've had all kinds of different things that have been happening. And so one of the things that I worry about with our agents is understanding where their mindset space is. So we've talked about working with right now buyers. I don't know that I need to go back through that. One of the fastest ways to tank your mindset is to work with a whole bunch of buyers that can't do anything right now. Make sure you're working with the buyers that can do something right now. Build out a follow-up plan for those other buyers. You don't need to show them houses. Learn the role, learn how to have the conversation of, I want to make sure that we're looking when you're ready to buy, because these homes won't be available in December, right? Whatever that conversation is. Now, here's where I want to spend some time. I want you guys to think about, what are you listening to? Who are you surrounding yourself with? What are you allowing in your headspace? Because here's what I can tell you. If you're putting in things like this, right? Like you look at this program, I'm a pretty positive person, right? I believe that any market is a great market to buy and sell. I'm also giving you information that hopefully makes your life easier, right? You'll have a chance for a survey later, so you can let me know if that's not true. Yet, I also want to make sure that you're listening to things like good music and good podcasts and good books and these types of things that are going to be good mindset things for you. And I don't mean podcasts and books that are just revolved around real estate and bettering ourselves. It can be a novel, it can be an autobiography, it can be something that gives you good information and good energy. The other thing is what else are you putting in? So when I look at what are you putting in, are you putting in good books, good podcasts? Are you putting in good food? Are you putting in good drink choices? Are you putting in anything to do with whatever your faith might be, right? Are you surrounding yourself with people that believe in you? Because what happens is if that's what we put in stressful times, that's what comes out. If I believe the best and I'm surrounding myself with people that think I can do it, when I get stressed, I don't doubt every life choice I've ever made. There are days that we can do that, not often, right? However, if I'm putting in national media and I'm just on social media and maybe I'm not eating the right foods and maybe I'm not drinking the right drinks and maybe I'm not getting enough sleep and I'm surrounding myself with people that don't think I can do it or don't believe in the vision of where I'm going, that when I get stressed, guess what else happens? Every other thing seems worse. I'm not rested. I'm not drinking the right things. I'm not eating the right things. I'm not exercising, right? All of those things control how we handle stress. Hard is hard. Whether you're in a market that's still in multiple offers or you're in a market that buyers are hesitant to do anything, they're both hard. How we handle hard, though, is our choice. And so when we look at mindset and those types of things, I want to encourage all of you to look at, what am I allowing in? Who am I spending time with? What am I reading? What am I eating? And then I want you to look at building in margin. We already talked about being a student of the market. So we talked about that earlier. Look at your hyperlocal data. Don't get swayed by national media. But when I look at building in margin, here's what I mean by that. When you book yourself appointment to appointment to appointment, there's no opportunity to think or to handle a fire, right? There are no real estate emergencies. Like, we're not saving lives here. However, things pop up. A buyer loses a job. And if I'm going from showing to showing to showing, and I don't have the ability to talk to that buyer, how stressed am I? How do I handle that conversation with that buyer when I finally talk to them? Well, I show up stressed, not sympathetic that they lost their job. Or an appraisal comes in low and we've got 24 hours to handle it, and I'm booked all day till 7 o'clock, and my kids have a basketball game at 7 o'clock. Well, guess what? Now, not only am I probably not enjoying the basketball game, my kids probably aren't enjoying my presence because I'm stressed. So when you're building out your days, you've got to allow some space to have a misstep. You have to have, and you have to allow space to take an opportunity. If I'm back to back to back to back, and all of a sudden a great investment property pops up on the market, do I have the ability to take advantage of that or send it to one of my investors? Well, no, because I'm not looking for it. So when we're scheduling our things, work with those right now buyers, put everybody else on a follow-up plan, and then schedule yourself in a way that you've got a little bit of a buffer. One of the other things that I will just say is like a life hack. If you have friends that you're going home to, a family you're going home to, whether that's a kid or a partner, don't walk in the house on your phone. I'm just life lesson of managing mindset of those around you. I'll drive around my neighborhood for 10 minutes before to finish a call so that when I pull in, I can hang up and I get to walk in and have 10 or 15 minutes with the people that I love most in the world. I leave my phone in the car for those first 10 or 15 minutes because they should get to have the best part of me, not just what's left over. And so as you're building in margin, also look at, how am I having an intentional relationship with those people I love the most? Because I will tell you from a coaching perspective, real estate agents are not often the best at relationships and making people feel important that are important, because we're so great at customer service that we take great care of our clients and not great care of those that are around us. We take for granted those relationships. And so one of the things when we're managing our mindset, I very often will leave my phone in the car and I have to think to myself, I get to choose how my night goes based on how I walk in this door. If I walk in happy and excited and I get to ask questions about, how my kids' day went, they feel important and they feel valued. It actually probably sets me up later to be able to handle a phone call or a text message. Yet if I walk in on the phone and I'm stressed out and I'm like, let's go. We've got to get dinner on the table. We got to do this. I'm creating the environment where there's still stress. And so now I've got an environment that I work in that can be stressful. And now I'm creating that same level of stress at home. So this is why I spent so much time on this is I do worry in a shifting market about mindset. So if you start to feel overwhelmed or anxious or any of those types of things, take some time, take a step back, look at, am I eating right? Am I exercising? Am I getting into dollar producing activities fast? When production is high, anxiety is low. So what I know is if I'm anxious and I can start my day with high energy, lead generation, moving buyers forward, doing those things, by the time I get to the afternoon, I feel better. Okay, so these are just some ideas around the contract process. So when's the best time to schedule inspections? Monday through Wednesday, Monday through Thursday. Don't schedule one on a Friday because I promise you'll get it Friday night while you're at dinner with your family. How do we set expectations on what to expect from the seller during this process? We talked about that a little bit ago. Let the buyer know how much time the seller has to respond to you. Do you know what the deal breakers are for your buyers, right? Some of us know I've got a buyer that's allergic to mold. If mold shows up in a crawl space here, they're going to freak out because they have an allergy, right? Or whatever it is that that's their hot button. I'm looking for it so that I can help them through it if it happens. Preventing buyer's remorse. If you're in a showing and somebody's like, gosh, Jen, I just want to think about it. I just want to sleep on it. I'm just going to say, I typically will say, let's just go back in right now. I'm not going to chatter. You walk in, you look through the house. This will be a second showing. You've got the ability to take another look at it without emotion attached to it. Let's walk back out to the car. We're going to walk back in the door and you're going to take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes. That works for buyers that want to sleep on it. It also works for buyers that are like, oh my gosh, I've got to write an offer. There are 12 offers in and I've got to do this. Take advantage of the time, your time while you're already at the house, and just show it a second time. Again, ensuring that the buyer understands the contract and any contingencies that they've waived, making sure the non-negotiables that we've discussed during the strategy plus discussed in the strategy session are in place. So they said they had to have this school district, they had to have a pool, they had to have this. Those were the non-negotiables. Does it fit all those boxes? Because if it does, awesome. If it doesn't, we need to address it right then. Hey, I thought a pool was a deal breaker. This didn't have a pool. Why are we even looking at it, right? Because I want to know what changed. Otherwise, that's going to come back as buyer's remorse later. Reiterate the match and motivation and timeline, and then we're going to over communicate during the rest of the process. Okay, so I'm going to jump into homework and then we'll do Q&As. We have a survey that you can fill out this week or next. So I am in a contest with some of the other coaches to see who can get the most responses. So I need you to either respond today or next week. And I want you to be honest. It's not going to hurt my feelings. It does help me grow and learn how we could do things different. So if you want to wait till next week to see if you like that week too, that's totally cool. Here's your homework for the week. Find your market specific verbiage for, and we can't say escalation clause or appraisal gap if you're in a different market. So if you're still in a very fast moving market, tell me what your specific verbiage is for this. If you're in a slow moving market, then what I want to know is how would you present a low offer? Write out the conversation that you might have with that listing agent. Okay, so we're going to jump in. And Cynthia said, oh, do you mind bringing up the slide for winning multiple offers again? So Cynthia, that will actually all be in your portal. So if you want to jump in and take a look at it, you guys have the whole slide deck for all 6 sessions. Does anybody else have any questions or did they learn anything today? No learning? No questions? Nancy said every day. Cool. All right, you guys are shy today. Are you just sad for next week that it's our last week?
I did love what you said when I have a buyer that we went through the, I I can't think of the words, but anyway, about what she's looking for. She wants to be in the country. She wants some acreage because she wants to maybe build some tiny homes. And she keeps sending me listings that are in town. And it's so frustrating. And I used your line because I do watch your recon, which I love, by the way. All of you should be watching it multiple times. I watch them multiple times because we're smarter every day in this business, and that's what we're here for. But anyway, I used your line with her saying, I must have misunderstood you because I thought you really wanted to be in the country and have some space. And these 2 properties you just sent me are in town. Did I get something wrong? She didn't respond to that. So I don't know how that was received, but is there any other thing else you can do when they keep doing it anyway?
I probably would call instead of sending a text. So in anything that I'm going to push back with on a buyer, I want to make sure that they hear in my voice that I genuinely believe that I think I missed something instead of sending it. So I probably would call and just say, hey, I know that, you had sent me those properties. I just wanted to follow up. I didn't hear anything back from you. I do want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I want to make sure that I get you the best house at the best price that fits your needs. So talk me through this. Because the thing is maybe something did change. Maybe she discovered they're not going to do tiny homes, or I don't, whatever it was. I would just follow up with a call. And just as a reminder, anytime I'm going to push back on something with a buyer, I'm going to call them because I want them to hear the voice inflection of, I believe that I've made some sort of a misstep.
Okay, great.
Awesome. All right, everybody, have a great day. And I will see you next week. Investment properties are up next.
Thanks.